When I first moved into my apartment, I was excited to start fresh in a new neighborhood. It was a small, close-knit community where everyone seemed to know each other. The building itself was old but charming, with creaky floors and ornate iron railings on the balconies. The unit next to mine was occupied by an elderly woman named Mrs. Langley. She was sweet but eccentric, always dressed in faded floral dresses and speaking in a low, almost whispering voice. She'd often leave her door ajar, and I'd see her sitting in her chair by the window, staring outside like she was waiting for someone. We exchanged pleasantries at first, but over time, she started to feel off. She'd sometimes knock on my door late at night, asking odd questions like, "Have you seen him yet?" or "Do you hear it too?" When I asked who or what she meant, she'd just shake her head and say, "Never mind. You'll understand soon." One night, I heard faint music coming from her apartment, old-timey piano tunes, like something from a black and white movie. I thought it was strange, given how quiet she usually was. The music continued for hours, and when I finally went over to check, her door was wide open. "Mrs. Langley?" I called out, stepping inside. Her apartment was empty. The music was coming from a dusty old record player in the corner, spinning but not plugged in. The room was cluttered with strange objects, faded photographs, dried flowers, and an old clock that wasn't ticking. Her chair by the window was still there, but it was empty. I reported her disappearance to the building manager, who gave me a puzzled look. "Mrs. Langley? There's no one by that name living here," he said. Confused, I insisted. "She lives next door to me. I've spoken to her plenty of times." He shook his head. "That apartment's been vacant for years. The last tenant passed away, a woman named Mrs. Langley, actually, but that was over a decade ago." I couldn't believe it. I went back to the apartment and tried the door, but it was locked. It looked abandoned, the windows dusty and the lights off. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking I heard faint music again, but every time I got up to check, it would stop. Then, just as I was drifting off, I heard a soft knock on my door. I froze, my heart racing. Slowly, I got up and looked through the peephole. No one was there, but on the floor was a single faded photograph. It showed a much younger Mrs. Langley, sitting in her chair by the window. Standing behind her was a shadowy figure, its face obscured. I don't live in that building anymore, but I still have the photograph. Every so often, I take it out, and for just a second, I swear I can hear faint piano music in the distance.